My name is Frank Turner, and if you told me 3 years ago that I'd end up sharing my house in Cleveland, Ohio with my son and his wife, living more like an unwanted guest than the man who built this home, I wouldn't have believed you. Tonight, as another wave of fever crashed through my chest, I leaned heavy against the doorframe and watched Ethan and Madison, my only son and his wife, draped across my couch like it was theirs. The TV lit their faces with an electric blue, some new crime series blasting from the speakers. I gripped the wall to steady myself. My old bones ached from head to toe, my breaths coming out as thin, raspy gasps. My temperature was pushing 104, but neither of them even blinked. Ethan, I need to get to the pharmacy. My fever's getting worse. My voice was rough, hollowed out by days of coughing. He didn't even look up, just fiddled with the TV remote, barely shrugging. Not now, Dad. This is the finale. You'll be fine. I could feel the sweat soaking through my shirt, the living room I'd built with my own hands suddenly foreign. My son, who I'd spent my whole life supporting, just kept his eyes glued to the screen. Madison, legs curled under her, rolled her eyes in my direction. Frank, it's probably just a cold. Take some Tylenol and rest. A cold. If only it was that easy. My hands were shaking, and my chest burned with every breath, but they were too lost in the world of fictional detectives and fake drama to care about the real person struggling in front of them. For a moment, I remembered those years at the Cleveland Tool and Die, coming home black with grease and exhausted, making sure Ethan had everything he needed. I'd paid his college tuition, helped him with his first car, and, when he lost his job, welcomed him and Madison into my home. 3 years. That's how long they've lived here, rent-free. Not a cent for groceries or the mortgage. I'd reminded Ethan of that once or twice, and all I got back was a sigh and a look that said I was being dramatic. Tonight my patience ran out. You know, you haven't paid a single bill here for 3 years. I blurted out, the words tumbling out, hot and bitter. Ethan shot me a glare. Here we go again, he muttered, like I was the problem. I stumbled further into the room, my anger the only thing keeping me upright. You can't even help your own father when he's sick? When I spent 40 years working so you could have all this? Ethan finally looked at me, but I saw no understanding, just annoyance. Madison paused the TV with a loud sigh. Can we please not do this right now? The pharmacy's open another half hour. You'll survive. I stared at them, 2 adults lounging in the house I'd spent decades paying off, acting like I was some kind of nuisance. The family photos on the mantel, Ethan's graduation, holidays, moments that felt so distant now, seemed to belong to someone else's life. You know, one day this house will be yours, I said, my voice cold. Along with the savings. But not if you treat me like this. That got their attention. Ethan finally turned off the TV. Madison sat up straighter. For the first time in months, they both actually looked at me. The silence was thick, their eyes calculating. I was already halfway to the stairs, every step feeling heavier than the last. I could hear them whispering, voices tense, like they were already planning what to do with my money once I was gone. At the bottom of the stairs, I stopped and looked back at them. You know, I used to think family meant something more, I said quietly. Maybe I was wrong, Ethan called after me. Dad, wait. Maybe we overreacted. His voice was softer, but it didn't sound sincere. He was worried about what he might lose, not about me. I gripped the banister, my hand white-knuckled. For the first time, I saw them for who they were, people waiting for me to leave so they could claim what they thought they deserved. $650,000. That's what they'd inherit, house and savings combined. The numbers hung in the air, heavier than any fever. Madison's tone changed. Frank, you know we care about you. We're just stressed about bills. She finally muted the TV. Stressed. I laughed, hoarse and bitter. They had a free home, free food, all the comforts I worked for, and I was the one left alone and sick. I stared at them, really stared. All the years of work, all the sacrifices, reduced to this. It was suddenly, painfully clear. I wasn't a father to them anymore, just a barrier to their inheritance. I dragged myself up the stairs, fighting the urge to look back. I could hear them in the living room, voices low, as if plotting their next move. That night, feverish and weak in bed, I watched the digital clock tick away the minutes. My thoughts spun like autumn leaves in a storm, memories, regrets, anger, fear. As the fever burned higher, I realized that my biggest mistake wasn't getting sick. It was trusting that the people I loved would love me back when I needed them most. But I was done being a victim. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't go down quietly. I didn't sleep much that night. Fever dreams had me tossing and turning, but by sunrise, a strange clarity had settled in. I realized that I couldn't rely on Ethan or Madison for anything, not concern, not help, not even honesty. The medicine cabinet in my bathroom was empty, save for a dusty bottle of aspirin. I'd run out of proper cold meds 2 days ago. As the house filled with the smell of brewing coffee, my own routine, not theirs, I heard Madison's laughter drifting up from the kitchen, followed by the sound of Ethan's video game. Not a word about my fever, not a knock to check if I'd made it through the night. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about everything I'd sacrificed for them. I'd skipped vacations, worked double shifts, put off retirement. Also, Ethan could go to college, so he and Madison could have a soft landing when they lost their apartment in Columbus. I remembered Madison's tearful gratitude the first night they moved in, promising it was only until we get back on our feet. That was 3 years ago. By noon, I was shivering under a blanket, feeling weaker by the hour. I needed medication. The nearest pharmacy, Maple Crest Pharmacy, was 6 blocks away, but in my condition, it might as well have been on the moon. That's when Madison knocked, almost timidly, for the first time in months. She peeked around the door, lips pressed together in a worried line. "Frank, how are you feeling?" she asked, her voice suddenly soft. I eyed her carefully. "Like I need to get to Maple Crest before it closes, but I'm not sure I'll make it on my own." She hesitated, glancing back down the hall. "Ethan's busy. He's got a job interview call. I can drive you if you want." It was the first real offer of help since I got sick. I forced myself to sit up, ignoring the pounding in my chest. Madison handed me a sweater and my old denim jacket. Her hands lingered as she helped me up, but her eyes kept flicking to my bedside table, where a small jewelry box, my late wife's, sat half open. I struggled down the stairs, Madison's arm steadying me. Outside, the afternoon was cold and gray, rain tapping against the windshield as we climbed into my Ford. Madison drove with nervous energy, checking the rearview mirror a little too often, tapping the wheel at every red light. She glanced at me as we passed the library on Mason Avenue. "How long have you been feeling like this?" she asked, her tone casual but probing. "A few days," I answered, "but it got bad last night. I haven't had real medicine in days." She nodded, silent. I noticed she didn't ask about my symptoms. Instead, she said, "You know, Ethan and we appreciate everything you've done. Things have been hard." I bit back a response. She was talking about money, not about my health. The rest of the drive was quiet except for the wipers and the low hum of the heater. At Maple Crest, the place was almost empty, just a couple of shoppers and Mr. Simons, the old pharmacist who'd known me since the kids were little. Madison parked and hurried inside with me, her hand on my elbow, but as soon as we reached the counter, her demeanor shifted. "Frank's got a bad fever," she told Mr. Simons, her smile wide but a little forced. "We need something strong." Mr. Simons took one look at me, shook his head. "Frank, you look like you've been through the ringer. Any allergies?" "Just penicillin." I croaked, grateful someone cared enough to ask. Madison kept glancing at the counter, watching as he pulled out antibiotics, a bottle of cough syrup, and some fever reducers. "That'll be $42, Mr. Simons said, bagging everything up. I reached for my wallet, but my hands fumbled dizzy. Madison swooped in, grabbed the bag, and smiled. "I'll pay," she offered, but as she did, her hand dipped into the bag, fingers shifting something inside before she handed the bag to me. I didn't think much of it at the time. Fever makes everything foggy. On the way back to the car, Madison was even quieter. She asked if I wanted to stop for soup. I shook my head, clutching the pharmacy bag tight, feeling a strange sense of unease. We pulled into the driveway. I thanked her, struggling up the steps on my own. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the medicine. Madison busied herself in the next room, her voice low on the phone with Ethan. I heard my name mentioned, then a pause. "No, he's got everything he needs," Madison said quickly. "It's taken care of." "Taken care of?" I shivered. Something about the whole interaction felt wrong. I opened the bag again, my hands trembling. The boxes looked right, but my mind was too foggy to trust my instincts. I swallowed 2 fever reducers and half the antibiotics, just as Mr. Simons had instructed. But doubt gnawed at me. Was it just fever, or was something else going on? Later that night, as the chills worsened and the world blurred around the edges, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spin. Shadows danced on the walls, memories and suspicions twining together. Madison had never been so eager to help, never so efficient. Why did she want to pay for my medicine? Why did she seem relieved when I finally took the pills? Why did I catch her and Ethan whispering about the plan just before dinner? As sleep finally claimed me, one thought echoed above all others. Something's not right in this house. And if I wanted to survive, I'd have to watch everyone, especially my own family, a lot more closely. That night, my dreams were crowded with old faces, my late wife, my parents, even Ethan as a boy, each of them asking me why I trusted the wrong people. I woke up before dawn, soaked in sweat and shaking with chills. The house was silent, but the walls seemed to whisper every regret and mistake I'd made. I sat up slowly, my head spinning. The medicine from Maple Crest sat unopened on my nightstand, except for those first pills I'd forced myself to take. As the fever hammered away at my bones, my mind kept returning to Madison's odd behavior at the pharmacy. The way she had reached into the bag. The hurried phone call with Ethan. And the way she kept glancing at me, too intent, too interested, not in my recovery, but in what I was taking. It was too much to be a coincidence. A little after 7 a.m., the doorbell rang. For a moment I thought I'd imagined it, but then it rang again, longer this time. I shuffled downstairs, heart pounding, each step a struggle. When I opened the door, there stood Mr. Simons, the pharmacist, holding a second paper bag in his hands. "Frank," he said, his voice low and serious. "I know you're not feeling well, but can I come in for a minute?" He stepped inside, glancing over his shoulder, as if making sure Madison and Ethan weren't around. "I saw your daughter-in-law swap something in your pharmacy bag last night," he said without hesitation. "It looked like she tried to switch out your antibiotics for something else while I was in the back room." My blood ran cold. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. After you left, I checked the security cameras. It's all on tape. She waited until I turned to get your receipt, then reached into the bag and swapped the pills with another bottle from her purse. I couldn't stop her in the moment, but I brought you the correct medication myself." He pressed the new bag into my hands. "Don't take any more from what Madison gave you. Here, take this instead." My hand shook as I opened the new bag, finding a bottle with my name on it, still sealed. My mind was racing. Why would Madison try to switch my medication? Was she really so desperate for an inheritance that she'd risk my life? Mr. Simons's face was tight with worry. I called the police, Frank. They're going to want to talk to you. But for now, you need to get better. You need to stay sharp. He left as quietly as he'd arrived, leaving me standing in the front hallway, clutching the new medicine and feeling more alone than ever. I stumbled into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took the correct pills. The bitterness in my mouth had nothing to do with the medicine. By mid-morning, the fever had ebbed a little, enough for me to think more clearly. I watched Madison and Ethan from the dining room as they sat in the living room, laughing about something on their phones. It was all an act, I realized. Their concern, their sudden helpfulness, it was nothing but a front. Maybe they thought I was too old and too sick to notice what was going on under my own roof. But I was paying attention now. I started to keep notes, writing everything in a spiral notebook I'd kept since my days at the plant. Every strange glance, every hushed conversation, every odd detail. If they wanted to play games, I'd play too, but by my rules. Around lunchtime, Madison called up the stairs. Frank, do you want anything to eat? Her voice was syrupy sweet, but I could see right through it. No, thanks. I called back, my own voice steady. I'll just have soup later. The rest of the day passed in a fog of suspicion and resentment. I found myself reliving every moment of generosity, every check I'd written to help Ethan, every bill I'd covered when they were in trouble. Had it all meant nothing? Was I just a stepping stone for their comfort and plans? That afternoon, as the clouds broke and sunlight poured through the kitchen window, I heard Ethan and Madison arguing quietly in the hallway. We need to find out if he's changed the will, Madison hissed. Ethan sounded anxious. He hasn't. He told me last year it was still the same. We're set, just as long as he. He didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear as day. I gripped the table, heart pounding. This was no longer about family squabbles or hurt feelings. My own son and his wife were plotting to benefit from my death, and Madison was willing to speed up the process. After dinner, which I made myself, canned soup and toast, since I didn't trust anything Madison cooked, I sat in the living room with the notebook open on my lap, pretending to read. Madison hovered, offering tea, but I waved her off. When they finally went upstairs, I sat in the dark, the TV off, listening to the house creak and settle around me. Every memory seemed sharper now, Ethan as a boy, proud and eager, so different from the man plotting in my living room. I pulled out my old cell phone, the one I kept for emergencies. Maybe it was time to call my lawyer. Maybe it was time to rewrite more than just my will. Before bed, I checked the new medication one last time, then locked my bedroom door, something I hadn't done in years. I might be old, and I might be sick, but I wasn't going to let anyone write the end of my story except me. I didn't sleep much that night. I'd locked my bedroom door for the first time in decades, and every sound from the hallway set my nerves on edge. I lay there, my mind racing with every possibility. Would they try something else? How far were Ethan and Madison willing to go? By sunrise, my fever had broken a little. I felt weak, but my thoughts were sharp. I knew I needed to take back control of my life, and fast. My first move was to call my lawyer, Mr. Harold Bryant, the same man who'd helped me write my will after my wife died. I dialed the number from my old phone, my hands trembling only slightly. Frank? Good to hear from you, old friend. How can I help? Harold, I need to meet. Today. It's urgent. He could hear the seriousness in my voice. Come by my office at noon. Don't bring anyone. We'll talk in private. I hung up, feeling a strange relief. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I had a plan. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Madison was gone. She'd left a note on the fridge saying she had errands, but I didn't buy it for a second. Ethan sat on the back porch, pretending to be on a conference call, but I could hear the worry in his voice when he talked to Madison on the phone. "Did you check if he took the pills?" he whispered, unaware I was listening through the open kitchen window. "What did Simon say when you called?" "No, don't panic. Just stick to the plan." I made myself a cup of instant coffee and sipped it slowly, memorizing every word. Just before 11, there was a knock at the door. I tensed, but when I opened it, it was Mr. Simons, the pharmacist, again. He looked more exhausted than before, his eyes sunken behind his glasses. "Frank, I talked to the police this morning. They're going to want your statement, but they're being careful. They need evidence before they make a move." I nodded, feeling the weight of everything settle on my shoulders. "Thank you, Paul. You probably saved my life." He waved me off, but his voice was thick with emotion. "Just promise me you'll watch your back. Family can be the most dangerous people, sometimes." After he left, I quickly packed a small bag, just my wallet, my new medication, a change of clothes, and my notebook of evidence. I told Ethan I had a doctor's appointment. He looked relieved, but I saw the flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "Want me to drive you?" he offered. "No, thanks. I need the fresh air." I took my own car and drove the back way into downtown Cleveland, making sure I wasn't followed. It felt almost paranoid, but after what I'd seen, I knew you couldn't be too careful, not when your own family wanted you gone. Harold's office was in an old brick building next to the courthouse. He greeted me with a strong handshake and ushered me into a quiet room at the back. "Frank, what's this about?" I didn't hold anything back. I told him everything, about Madison's switch at the pharmacy, about Ethan's conversations, about Mr. Simons's warning and the police. He listened in silence, taking notes with his gold pen. When I finished, he leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "We need to act now," he said. "First, we'll update your will, make it crystal clear what your wishes are, and ensure there's no way Ethan or Madison can manipulate the estate if something happens to you." I nodded, but Harold wasn't finished. "I also recommend you transfer some of your assets. Set up a living trust, choose a backup beneficiary. Maybe a charity or a close friend you trust." I thought of my old army buddy, Bill, who'd stayed honest all his life. "Make it Bill. If anything happens to me, it all goes to him, or to the local Veterans Fund. I don't care. I just want Ethan and Madison out of my affairs." Harold smiled grimly. "Consider it done." For the next hour, we drafted new documents. I signed, dated, and initialed every page, making sure it would all stand up in court. Harold arranged for 2 witnesses from his office to sign too. "Do you want to involve the police now?" he asked. I hesitated. "Not yet. Let's see what happens tonight. If they make another move, I'll have enough evidence to bury them." I left his office feeling more empowered than I had in weeks. The sky was a hard blue over the city, the kind you only get in Ohio in late autumn. I drove to the Veterans Hall, handed over a sealed envelope for Bill, and told him to keep it safe. Just in case. He didn't ask questions, just nodded, his eyes full of silent understanding. Back at home, Ethan and Madison were waiting for me in the living room, their smiles thin and brittle. "How was the appointment, Dad?" Ethan asked, too casual. "Fine," I said. "Doctor says I should rest, and keep taking my new prescription." Madison stiffened at that, but tried to cover it. "That's good. We're glad you're feeling better." I saw their eyes flick to each other. The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. That night, I lay in bed with my door locked again, notebook at my side, and my cell phone ready. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing. If Ethan or Madison tried anything else, I was ready. I was done being the trusting old man. I was done being their victim. From now on, I would play this game my way. The next morning, I woke to a different kind of silence in the house. Ethan and Madison were whispering in the kitchen, but the usual fake politeness was gone. Instead, I could sense their nerves, their tension. Maybe they suspected something had shifted. Maybe they sensed they were no longer the only ones playing the game. I made my way downstairs, acting every bit the weak old man. I coughed a little louder, shuffled a bit slower, keeping their guard down. Madison immediately turned, flashing her best concerned daughter-in-law smile. "Frank, would you like some breakfast? I can make you some eggs or oatmeal," she offered. I forced a grateful nod. "Oatmeal sounds good. Thank you, Madison." She started busying herself at the stove, but I watched her every move, noting how she kept glancing at the bottle of pills on the counter. She was waiting, probably hoping I'd take one in front of her. I didn't. I just drank my coffee, quietly sliding the new, correct medicine from Mr. Simons into my pocket for later. Ethan sat across from me, scrolling his phone, but I could tell his mind was elsewhere. He kept shooting nervous looks at Madison, then at me, as if waiting for something to happen. I finished my breakfast and excused myself, leaving the half-empty mug behind. Upstairs, I pulled out my notebook and added a new entry. "Madison keeps pushing pills at breakfast." Ethan tense, distracted. Both on edge. I never thought I'd have to document my own son's actions like this. But things had gone far past forgiveness. I had one goal now: protect myself, no matter what. Late in the morning, there was a knock at the door. This time, it was Detective Karen O'Donnell from the Cleveland Police, wearing a sharp suit and an unreadable expression. "Mr. Turner? May I come in for a moment?" I nodded, letting her inside. Ethan and Madison appeared in the hall, trying to act casual. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Turner privately," she said, her voice polite but firm. We stepped into my study and closed the door. "Mr. Turner," she began, "we've received a report from Paul Simons at Maple Crest Pharmacy. He alleges that your daughter-in-law tried to switch your prescription. Can you confirm any of this?" I nodded. "She swapped the pills when she thought no one was watching. Mr. Simons brought me the right medication. I kept the swapped bottle. It's in my room." Detective O'Donnell's eyes sharpened. "You understand, sir, that's a serious accusation. If we send the pills to the lab and they're not what your prescription says, this becomes a criminal matter." I nodded again. "Do what you have to do. I'm not taking any chances." She took the bottle, bagged it, and made a few notes in her folder. "For now, keep your distance. Don't eat or drink anything you haven't prepared yourself. If you notice anything strange, call me immediately. We're watching them, Mr. Turner." After she left, I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Finally, someone believed me. Finally, I wasn't alone in this fight. That evening, I called Ethan and Madison into the living room. I'd had enough of hiding, enough of pretending I didn't know what was going on. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. "There have been too many secrets in this house. Too many lies." Ethan's face strained of color. Madison stiffened, crossing her arms. "What are you talking about, Dad?" Ethan asked, trying to sound innocent. I looked at Madison. "Why did you switch my medication at the pharmacy?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes darted to Ethan, then back to me. I don't know what you're talking about." I shook my head. "The pharmacist saw you. There are cameras. The police have the evidence." Ethan exploded, his voice rising. "This is insane. Why would we ever hurt you?" "Because you want the money," I said, my voice calm and cold. "Because you want this house, the savings, everything I built over 40 years. There was a long, heavy silence. Madison started to cry, real tears, or just another performance, I couldn't tell. "Frank, please, you're sick? You're confused. We would never." I cut her off. "Save it, Madison. The police are involved now. If you try anything else, you'll end up in jail. Do you understand? Ethan finally spoke, voice trembling with anger. So what now? You just kick us out? No. Not yet. You've got a week to find another place. 7 days. After that, you're gone. I've already changed my will. If anything happens to me, you two get nothing. Not a dime. They stared at me, shell-shocked. For the first time, I saw real fear in their eyes, not of me, but of losing everything they'd counted on. That night, I double-locked my bedroom door and pushed a chair up against it for good measure. I could hear them packing downstairs, arguing in desperate, whispered voices. The walls seemed to vibrate with tension, but I felt lighter, almost free. I'd taken my power back. I wasn't just a sick old man in the corner anymore. I was the man who built this house, who survived war, heartbreak, and a lifetime of hard labor. I'd faced worse than these two, and I'd come out stronger every time. Whatever happened next, I was ready. And if they thought they'd seen the last of my fight, they were dead wrong. The next day, the atmosphere in the house was thick with dread. Ethan and Madison were moving through the rooms like ghosts, whispering to each other, slamming doors, making desperate phone calls to anyone who'd listen. I kept to myself, mostly in my study, my notebook in hand, listening to every argument and every frantic attempt to salvage what they thought was their future. The police stopped by twice. Detective O'Donnell came in with a second officer, this time asking for more details, more statements, and the original pharmacy bag. Madison tried to act offended, insisting it was all a mistake, but the detective's cold stare cut right through her performance. Ms. Turner, Detective O'Donnell said, our lab has already confirmed that the pills you substituted were not the medication prescribed to your father-in-law. Do you want to explain why you had them? Madison's bravado faded instantly. I just thought maybe he'd feel better if he tried a different brand, that's all. He's always so stubborn about his prescriptions. Ethan jumped in, voice shaky. Look, Madison just panicked. She didn't want Dad to get sicker. We never hurt him, Detective, I swear. But the detective wasn't having it. There's a difference between concern and tampering with someone's life-saving medication, Mr. Turner. I suggest you both get legal counsel. They left with another warning. Don't leave town. This is an ongoing investigation. For the next 2 days, Ethan and Madison barely spoke to me. They avoided eye contact, huddled together in their bedroom, coming out only for quick meals or to make calls. The house, once noisy with their TV shows and laughter, was now eerily silent. But I wasn't just waiting around. I called Mr. Bryant, my lawyer, again. It's time, I told him. File everything. The new will, the trust, all of it. I want copies in the safe and with Bill. I don't care about the cost, just get it done. By the 3rd day, Madison finally broke the silence. She appeared at my study door, pale and anxious, hands twisted in her sweater. Frank, can we talk? She said, her voice small. I let her in but didn't offer her a seat. She hovered near the door, eyes darting. I know you're angry. But you have to believe me, I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted Ethan and me to be safe. We're drowning in debt. Ethan hasn't had steady work in months. I thought if we could just get through this, things would turn around. Her words fell flat, rehearsed, hollow. I stared at her, silent, letting the weight of her choices settle in. Madison, you could have asked for help. Instead, you tried to steal what wasn't yours, and you almost killed me in the process. She burst into tears, covering her face, but this time, I felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger, just a cold, clean detachment. Years of sacrifice, erased by a single act of greed. That afternoon, Ethan tried a different approach. He waited until Madison left for a walk, then knocked on my door. Dad, listen, whatever you decide, I'm sorry. I let things get out of hand. I should have been stronger. Madison was desperate. I should have stopped her, but. He trailed off, shame and regret fighting for space on his face. I sighed. Ethan, I raised you to be better than this. But I can't fix what you've done. The police will decide what happens now. He nodded, defeated, and left without another word. As evening settled over the house, the phone rang. It was Detective O'Donnell. Mr. Turner, we'll be submitting our report to the district attorney tomorrow. Depending on the DA's recommendation, there may be charges. Do you have a place to stay if things become more volatile? I assured her I'd be fine. I'm locking my door and watching my back. They'll be gone soon anyway. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the years I'd spent building this home, the laughter and holidays, the sacrifices and struggles. How had it come to this, a family torn apart by greed? At dawn, I walked quietly through the empty house. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the pancakes I used to make for Ethan as a boy. The living room held photos of better days, birthdays, fishing trips, my wife's smile frozen in happier times. I paused at the front window, watching Madison load boxes into their battered sedan. Ethan was already outside, pacing nervously. 7 days. That was all it took to end 3 years of dependence, and if I was honest, 3 years of betrayal. Before they left, Ethan came back inside one last time. Dad, he said, voice heavy, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm sorry. For everything. I looked at him, searching for the boy I once knew, the boy who used to run into my arms after Little League games, the boy who said he wanted to grow up to be just like me. I hope you find your way, Ethan, I said quietly. But you can't do it here. Not anymore. He nodded, eyes shining with tears, then turned and left. Madison didn't say a word. She just got in the car, slammed the door, and stared straight ahead as they pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the chilly Ohio morning. As their car vanished down the street, I felt something inside me relax, a tension I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. For the first time in years, my home was quiet, peaceful. Mine again. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and allowed myself a long, steady breath. I'd survived. I'd kept my life, my dignity, and my future. But more than that, I'd reclaimed my strength, and that was worth more than any amount of money. For the first time in years, the house felt truly mine. The silence was different now, no longer heavy with secrets or betrayal, but peaceful, full of possibility. I sat at the kitchen table, tracing the grooves in the old wood, sunlight pooling on the floorboards. The same table where Ethan once built model airplanes, where my late wife read the morning paper, where birthdays were celebrated with laughter and cake. 7 days. That's all it took to turn my world upside down, and to set it right again. I spent the first morning alone cleaning, throwing open every window, letting the autumn air rush in. I scrubbed away the stains of worry and disappointment, boxing up what little Ethan and Madison left behind. I found myself humming as I worked, the old tunes my wife used to sing while she gardened. The weight on my chest began to lift. Around noon, Bill, my old army friend, showed up at the door, holding 2 coffees and a bag of donuts. He took one look at me and grinned. You look 10 years younger already, Frank. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Feels like I've just come home from a war and won. Bill sat with me at the kitchen table, listening as I told the whole story, about the pills, the betrayal, the police, the new will, and finally, about sending Ethan and Madison away for good. He didn't interrupt or offer empty advice. He just listened, the way true friends do. When I finished, he nodded. You did the right thing. Sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about respect. And you finally respected yourself enough to say enough. That takes guts. After Bill left, I found myself walking through the quiet house, touching the framed photos on the mantel, running my hand along the old banister I'd polished every spring. Every scar and dent in the wood meant something, a story, a lesson, a memory worth keeping. That night, I slept with my door unlocked for the first time since the ordeal began. I woke to the sound of birds, not the tense whispers or slammed doors of the past months. The sky outside was a clear blue. For breakfast, I made pancakes the way I used to for Ethan when he was little, and sat at the kitchen table alone, but not lonely. In the days that followed, the calls started coming, first from lawyers, then from Detective O'Donnell with an update. The DA had enough to press charges against Madison for tampering with prescription medication. Ethan's involvement was under review, but for now, he was free to start over somewhere else, without me as a safety net. There was no satisfaction in their downfall, no pleasure in seeing Madison get what she deserved. Only a clean sense of closure. I'd done what was necessary to protect myself, and in doing so, I'd finally learned that love is not just about sacrifice, it's about boundaries and respect. I updated my will again, leaving the house and what was left of my savings to the local Veterans Association and a small scholarship fund in my wife's name for local kids who couldn't afford college. No more freeloaders. No more parasites. Only real help given to those who'd appreciate it. Friends started visiting more often. I took up fishing again, met neighbors for chess in the park, and even booked a trip to Vermont for the fall, something I'd always wanted to do, but never allowed myself while I was busy carrying everyone else. One afternoon, as I sat on the front porch with a book, a letter arrived from Ethan. He apologized, genuinely, for the first time in his adult life. He admitted his mistakes, his weaknesses, and thanked me for teaching him what not to become. He and Madison were trying to rebuild in a new city, working small jobs, learning the meaning of self-reliance the hard way. I wrote back, wishing him well, but making it clear, my door was closed to those who took more than they gave. If he wanted a relationship, he'd have to earn it. The days grew shorter, the leaves turning gold and crimson outside my window. I filled my life with the simple joys I'd ignored for too long: long walks, hot coffee, old music, and the freedom of a house that was finally a home again. Looking back, I realize the worst betrayals can come from the people you love most. But sometimes, facing that truth and standing up for yourself is the only way to reclaim your dignity and your future. I may be old, but I'm not finished living yet. My story didn't end with betrayal. It began again with courage. And for the first time in a long, long while, I was truly at peace.